Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you can hear me loud and clear. Welcome to another edition of TCRM Conversations with Iso Basi. This is TCRM Conversations, an initiative of the Cross River Movement, and they're aimed at engaging, bringing people together, engaging, exchanging ideas so as to foster the development of Cross River State. Tomorrow, the 27th of June, has been designated by the United Nations as MSME Day. And we thought that it would be fitting to dedicate today's conversation to MSMEs. And we know that MSMEs account for 90% of businesses, 60 to 70% of employment, and 50% of GDP worldwide. So these are worldwide statistics. So, as the backbone of societies everywhere, they contribute to local and national economies. The taxes that governments generate from MSMEs go towards supporting the provision of infrastructure and social services. So today, as we commemorate International MSME Day 2022, we're going to be discussing building a sustainable economy in Cross River State through MSMEs. So yeah, to set the tone for this conversation, we've got, very seasoned professionals, who will be talking to this afternoon, and I'm going to be introducing them not in any particular order. So firstly, we have Mr. Louis Ibok, and Louis Ibok is a business architect, he's a business coach, he's a consultant and trainer, and is presently the acting director general of the Cross River State Microfinance and Enterprise Development Agency, MEDA. The agency's mandate is to facilitate the establishment and growth of well-structured MSMEs in the state. So this is the man with the mandate to facilitate the growth and development of MSMEs in Cross River State. Secondly, we have Mr. James Alicha, who's an entrepreneur with proven contributions in promoting productivity, growth, and development of small and medium enterprises in Nigeria. He's the state chairman, Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, and a member of the Cross River State Council on MSMEs, Cross River State Organized Private Sector, and the Technical Committee on Investment Policy, Infrastructure Framework, and Investment Promotion of OECD PFI. And lastly, the last but not the least, we have Mr. Augustine Agbesonye, who is a seasoned banker and is currently the managing director of the Kondo Microfinance Bank, and is a certified microfinance practitioner and an alumnus of the prestigious Lagos Business School and the School of African Microfinance in Kenya. So it's a pleasure to have you all on this conversation. Now, usually what we do before we get straight into the conversation and begin to get the views of our panelists is we usually play video. So this is a vox pop where one of our volunteers goes out into the streets to sample opinion on people, on the topic that we're going to be discussing. So if you just give us a brief a minute or so, we should play that. And so it just gives you a feel for what people on ground think about the topic. All right.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cross River Movement. My name is Elizabeth Elebi and I am in the streets of Calabar. Today we'll be talking about building a sustainable economy in Cross River State through micro, small and medium enterprises. We will be asking business owners the challenges they face, how they overcome these challenges, and most especially what they think could be done to boost their businesses, contribute to the growth and development of the state. Let's get started.
This business kicked off in 2016. I think I have employed more than 12 staff worked with me. And since so far, that has taken away the joblessness in the state.
Business center now I get. So the kind of work what they do need light. So without light, I know they fit do anything. It's one or two things. Where things they move. At least I feel employ one or two person. At least that one go come up from government head. So government really need to try for us when it comes to that light of a thing. Because me na light, me I dey use work.
We really have to work on salary rates, increment in salary. Government does not increase people's salary. How would they meet up with demand in the market? And they should also work on these doors.
I'm limited because of finance. I process drinks into bottles and I know how much it costs me. The cost of purchasing the material, the staff, payment at the end of the month is a whole lot. If government can come in and give us some grants to help us push our business forward, I think it will go a long way.
That's all for today. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey. My name remains Elizabeth Ele.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. So we'll jump right in. I don't know if we have Mr. Louis Ibok on the conversation. Oh, okay, yeah, I think he's just joined us. His audio is connecting, so maybe we'll just give him a couple of seconds to come in, and then I think I'd like to throw the first question at him. Louis Ibok, can you hear me? Louis Ibok?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Thank you for joining the conversation. Okay. We had introduced you before you came on, and I think the first question I'd like to throw at you, which is, so we hear the term MSMEs. Now let's start from the beginning, as it were. Okay, so MSMEs we know stands for micro, small, and medium enterprises. And this term sort of lumps three segments of enterprises together. So you've got the micro, you've got the small, and you've got the medium. Are you able to break this down for us and tell us perhaps what a micro, a small, and a medium-sized enterprise is, just so we start from the basics and build up from there?
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining in. So for micro enterprises, refer to enterprises that have between 2 and 10 staff, between 2 and 10 staff. We define these things based on employee size and possibly also their asset base. Now, between 2 and 10 staff. And then for small enterprises, any enterprise that employs between 11 and 50 is called a small enterprise, while a medium enterprise is anyone that employs anything between 51 and 200 people. So these are easy definitions to use. Another definition would have been their asset categorization, or the asset volume. All right. So for asset volume, I think anything up to $1 million in terms of assets or turnover is a micro enterprise, and then between 1 million and 5 million is a small enterprise, and then between 5 million and about 50 is a medium enterprise, and then above 50 million is large and all that. So basically, that's the basic definition. but we like to work with number of employees, because that's what we can measure easily. Number of employees. It's not easily doctored like the turnover and asset base and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Ebok, thanks very much.
All right.
According to SMEDAN, which is I think it's a small and medium enterprises development of Nigeria. Yes, it says that there are about 39 million SMEs in Nigeria, and this was at about I think 2020. Are you able to give us an idea of how many of these MSMEs are based in Cross River State? Out of these 39 million across Nigeria, how many are there actually in Cross River State? You can give us an idea.
Well, at this point, I might not be able to do that because we don't have any real statistics or database of these guys. In the last few years, we've attempted to do that, but we stopped just in Calabar South and Municipal, and it wasn't even full. Now, the thing is that one of the challenges then was that you have a lot of people who run businesses out of their briefcase. So the challenge with the State Bureau of Statistics there was capturing these guys, apart from many other bureaucratic issues, but this was a major challenge. So as at today, I might not be able to give you exact figures or figures that that you can work with in terms of how many they are in the state.
Okay, all right. But would you, based on your interactions with them, like where would you say most of the enterprises in Cross River State fit? Would you classify most of them as micro, as small, or medium? What would you say is a spread? Just, you may not be able to give numbers, okay, but just your feel for it.
Well, I think that about 70 to 80% should be in micro and small, or maybe I should say 65% in micro, maybe another 15, 20 in small. And then you have a few medium, not very many large enterprises. Because the large enterprises can count on your fingers. People like maybe Lafarge and the flour mills and all those kind of people, right? So not many large. Most of them are micro and small. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think let me bring in Mr. James Alecha now. So, for as long as we can remember, Cross River State has been referred to as a civil service state. So much depends on government. The economy of the state seems to be so heavily reliant on government spending. How much of this is a reflection on, maybe the state being an unconducive destination for business? So, I'm not, I don't know what your views are, whether you might say that the state is a conducive place for doing business, but, what is your, what's your assessment? So the state continues to, for as long as we can remember, has been referred to as a civil service state. Why do you think that is? Why have MSMEs in Cross River State not been able to step up and really, take their place in the state?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Saul. The Cross River State environment is very, very conducive for MSME to thrive and grow. The challenges we have is the orientation, the mindset, and the orientation, the antecedent. Our parents or foreparents relied much on civil service. That was the orientation, the white-collar job. They believe in it. So our people key into it. Our young men, as they were growing up, key into it. So the spirit of entrepreneurship is not very much in our people. They see the risk that is involved in venturing into a business is quite risky. It is uncertain. So most people will wish or would like to go for what they can be certain about. That at the end of the month, his salary is sure, whether it rains or it shines. But going into entrepreneurship, the risk is how much you can fend for yourself, how much you can venture, how much you can work out opportunities that are before you. So our people mostly never went into businesses. But I think the scenario is changing and is gradually changing with the one government or the other trying to expand or to develop the entrepreneurial spirit of our people. Like Mr. Ibok has rightly said, before now, I don't think the ratio was up to that 55% or 70% like he was saying. It was quite low. But subsequent government, as they are coming, they are opening our people's eyes, and people now see the need to go into businesses, and it continues to increase, and it will continue to increase. So what is important is for our people to see business. Like if you go to other climes, the Yorubas, the Igbos, they rather detest civil service work. They go for businesses. One can go to the university, come back and get a shop, and you see with his educational knowledge, he will do better. But our people, when they get to higher education, they rather will go for an employment that will guarantee their salary every month. So I think those are some of the things that accounted for why the Cross River State is lukewarm in business development. But I think the mindset is changing.
Okay, Mr. Alicha, so you seem to be attributing it to maybe cultural factors, yeah? But we know that anybody can go anywhere in Nigeria and set up business. So if the business environment in Cross River State is conducive, people will come from Akwa Ibom, they will come from River State, they will come from Lagos to set up business. So, what are those, apart from the culture may be one aspect of it, but like I said, it's a level playing field. Anybody can come from anywhere in Nigeria and set up business in Cross River State. Why are people not doing enough of that?
No, there are more. If you look at from Bakassi to Obanliko, much of business activities is outsiders. Most business or structures are not owned by our people. Just go to the street and see. Most, I can say 60% to 70% are owned by outsiders. And they are doing well. What usually baffles me is that our people sit and see how somebody comes from elsewhere and is doing well in a particular business, and they sit and watch the person. They don't compete. They don't go into the business to participate. They don't. I keep asking questions. Why do you wait? This man comes, is making much money, building houses, and you are there. You go to your farm, go to your civil service work, make the money, come back and give to the person. And you go back and sit back without something in your pocket. So that is activity. Go to the street, you will see most businesses are owned by outsiders. So Cross River State is a conducive environment for any business to grow. And it is happening here in the state.
Okay, let me share some statistics with you, and I would like to get your opinion on what I'm about to share, and then I think I would ask Mr. Louis Ibok as well to comment, because I guess he runs the agency that is really in charge of MSMEs in the state. So according to the ease of doing business in Nigeria, so we're now looking at Cross River State amongst comparing to other states. So yes, in terms of starting a business, Cross River State ranked 31 out of 37. In terms of registering property, Cross River State was last, 37 out of 37. In terms of enforcing contracts, so I guess this has to do with the judiciary, Cross River State was 35 out of 37. What is your view then? We ranked better in terms of, I think, dealing with construction permits, but on 3 of those 4 key indices, the state is almost at the bottom of the list when it comes to states in Nigeria. So why would you say it's such a conducive place to do business?
Well, like I said earlier, the ease of doing business is largely controlled, or it ought to be controlled or provided by the government of the day. And because the business environment is very dull, like we have all observed, it seems government does not have much interest. Government is much interested in promoting what you call the startups. Mr. Ibo can speak on it. We only promote startups. We don't promote we don't handhold into the second stage. Like for instance, the startups are the micro to handhold into the small and handhold into the large industries. In that process, there is definitely requirement, legal requirement, and others ease of doing business requirement that government ought to provide. But because the environment is very dull business-wise, no much activity is involved. And so government does not look much into those areas. I remember when, was it in the period of Liel Imoke or Donald or so, we have a one-stop shop, which MEDA is today. That was to promote the ease of doing business. We have a one-stop shop where all the requirements for business registration and operation, you can obtain it in one office under MEDA. So those were efforts that, because then entrepreneurship was highly promoted, funds were allocated so that whatever are your hindrances, you can, get to one office and obtain all what you require under that, in that office.
Okay, all right. Let me come back to book, and Mr. Agbesoye, don't worry, I'm gonna get to you in a minute. But Louis Ibok, so what's your view on where the state stands in terms of these indices that I mentioned? So starting the business, 31st out of 37 subnationals, dealing with construction permits, 6th, which is fairly good, registering property, 37 out of 37, enforcing contracts, 35 out of 37.
All right, so maybe what I should say is this. Some of these reports are based on the sample size and the spread of that, the distribution of that sample, However, in every state, I think the government of the day determines what their areas of priority is. Like Mr. Alicha said, it was a little different in the past administration. There was emphasis on micro, small, and medium enterprises. That the drive was to create a private sector-driven economy. In the present government, I think the drive is more to industrialize the state by setting up strategic industries and trying to push it from there. So a few of these things may not have been looked into the way they need to. But the One-Stop Investment Center is actually run by the Investment Promotion Bureau, and that bureau still exists. And I think the One-Stop Investment Center is still functional. I remember at one time it was virtual because initially we had people from all the respective MDAs staying under one building. However, that didn't work much, so they decided to make it virtual. So if an investor comes, but it has been mainly investor focused. So when an investor comes in, either with local investment from within Nigeria or from outside of the shores of Nigeria, what they do is facilitate. Now, and like I said before, it depends on the sample and the sample size and also the distribution of that sample size. All right. So, but as of today, what you cannot deny is that there's a lot more awareness now. There's a lot more awareness now than it used to be. Mr. Alicha touched something. He said culturally, the entrepreneurial spirit has been low amongst our people. That's why you have more businesses from outside of the, owned by non-indigents of the state. Many things have happened. Maybe insecurity has increased a little bit. So some of the businesses have possibly relocated to neighboring states and all those kind of stuff. However, I think that there's still a way forward. A lot can still be done. We're not there. I mean, we're still far from where we want to be, but a lot can still be done.
Okay.
So basically, yeah.
Okay. All right. So just to mention, anyone who's here, if you have any question or comment you'd like to make, you can type it in the chat. Otherwise, if you would like to ask your question or make your comment, yourself, then, indicate. You can use the reactions icon, and just indicate that you'd like to say something, and, we will give you the opportunity to do that. Okay, so Mr. Alich has talked about the culture, he's emphasized a lot on the culture. Now, the state during the administration of Senator Lee Elimoke was fortunate to have the central bank funded or backed entrepreneurship development center cited in the state. Now, I know that center did a lot of training, a lot of hand-holding for MSMEs in the state. Louis Ibok, where do we stand now? I think that program ended maybe it ended a few years ago. What is being done at the moment to support MSMEs in the state? And, what was the impact of that EDC on the economy of the state and, on the MSMEs as a whole?
Okay, so maybe I'll start by saying first, in terms of impact, if we want to measure maybe the number of people trained or whose capacities were built, they supported well over 12,000 micro, small and medium enterprises within a period of 5 years, well over 12,000. And then also about 3,000 or a little more got funding at different levels. And the amounts of funds they received must have been in excess of close to 3 billion, in fact, close to 3 billion. I don't have the exact figures, but I think it's close to 3 billion. That is with the EDC.
Loans, or were they grants, or a combination of the two?
No, combination, loans and grants. Some of the grants were not, they were not state funds. Some of them were just facilitating maybe people to get federal government funds like the UWIN and the GEMS project. So all these added. Now, as of today, the EDC is still run by a private sector person who has an agreement with MIDA to run the EDC. However, you might not see as much activity now because a lot of those activities were driven by the fact that there were monies to get after the training. So maybe CBN was giving money and somebody has to go through the training to get it. So you had a lot of people. But as today, I think that EDC is collaborating with the EDC in the University of Calabar. So they are working at another level. So they have, if not for the ASU strike, the place is always buzzing with activity when school is in session. So the EDC is still working, maybe in quotes, not at the pace at which it was working prior to this time, but it's still working because it was established to run. And the agreement was after the tripartite agreement with the CBN ends, the state will take it over, which the state has, and has a private sector partner running that place now. Okay, so that is still running. And they're still researching into different ways of working with MSMEs. And as a result of that EDC, many other business development service providers have sprung up in the state who are also doing the same thing across the state. They are still training people and helping people access financing.
Okay, all right. Louis, thanks very much. I can see David's hand is up. So David, if you can unmute and please take the stage. And if anyone else has a question or a comment, just indicate in the chat. David Etim.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Etim.
Okay.
Thanks, Isor, for today. Quick one. At Louis, I just have some issues.
Okay.
What Isor said, Smidan says we have 39 million MSMEs in Nigeria. Now, Cross River State is a part of Nigeria. So when they were getting that 39 million, presumably some proportion of that 39 million were MSMEs in Cross River State. Are you saying that your agency was not part of the work done by Smidan, and so therefore does not have access to that database of MSMEs? I just wanted to be clear, because after the figures were rolled out, you could not own any portion of it. So I want to be sure, I want to be clear, why is there that disconnect? between
Well,
what Smith is doing and what your agency on the state, who should be like their foot on their boots on the ground, is not connected in that statistic. That's just one of the things I want to.
Okay, so
then,
very clearly, if can I answer or I should wait?
Hold on. I want to ask one question so that I get out of the way.
All right.
The one for Mr. Aliche. First, he had said, I'm a bit confused. He had said initially the state is conducive, that it is just the attitude of the indigents that is the challenge. And illustrated that point very soundly with the fact that a lot of, like he said, from Bakassi to Obaliku, you have a lot of small businesses going on, but mostly run by non-indigents. True. But then he went further to say, when they were talking about a few other statistics, he now said that the business environment is dull, okay, but non-indigents are thriving, okay. Then there seems to be some of that disconnect again. So I was just trying. These are the two areas where I had a bit of disconnect, which I would like Louis to add the side and Mr. Aliche to also address the side. Thank you.
Can I quickly make clarification on that?
Okay, Mr. Licha, yeah, go on and then.
Yeah, let me make clarification on that, Mr. Tim. Why I said so is that if you take a state like Rivers State or Lagos State, where there are high industrial activities, those activities attract the attention of government. Unlike Cross River State, like Louis earlier said, you can just count about 4 or 5 business concerns that are of high industrial activities. So they cannot attract much attention like that of Rivers State, for instance, or Lagos State, for instance. Much of what is in Cross River State is under micro, which is a higher percentage, and small, which is of a lower percentage. So if you match the two, you will see that it is, that's why I say it is dull, because it does not attract much interest to government in terms of activities, in terms of revenue, in terms of operation, and any other thing that can cause a policy change in government. So those are the areas I looked at it. So don't be confused, Mr. Chen.
All right. So for the question that Mr. David addressed towards me, I'd like to just say this. Firstly, SMEDAN is a federal government agency and MEDA is a state government. The challenge speaks to the synergy between state and federal government agencies. Indeed, there was a time when we had SMEDAN representatives domiciled in our office, but that is not the case anymore. And in any case, when this report was being done, this research, in quotes, was being done, we're not carried along, and we've not even seen this report, and we are not certain how accessible that is, because we've tried. The last one, that there was a prof that came from SMEDA at some time, dropped something. At that time, this was about 2012 or so, the figure I gave was 11 million for the whole country at that time. So I don't know how it's grown to 39 million. And then some of those figures, I don't want to question it here now, but the main thing is that we were not part of that exercise. I can say that unequivocally. I mean, we're not part of that exercise at all. All right, so maybe later we could go back and review what they've done, possibly ask from their office here for what they've done, if they have one. But I can assure you, if you also go to the office here, I'm not sure you have a copy of that report. Their office, SMEDAN office here in the state, you may not have that same report. All right, so the signage is just not there. It's just not there. Someone came the other day from the VP's office and said he wanted to do business clinics. Now, this is what we have been carrying on for a while. And nobody asked for the business support agency in the state. He picked a ministry and he had the program. Whether it was effective or not is another issue entirely. So these are things that will always occur. That synergy between the federal level and the state level is just not there in some instances. So this is just what happened in this case. So we're working on getting our own database. We're doing things to get our own database, but we can't give our figures yet until we verify them.
Okay, Louis, thanks very much. And maybe your views on how that problem can be solved. We know it's a problem across the country. We know it's a problem. Federal agencies have what they are doing, and the state is doing its own thing, and very often you've got conflict there. But maybe we'll get back to that. Let me bring in Mr.
Agbesoyin.
Yes, Agbesoyin. So thanks for being very patient. What I'd like to know from you, and this is just again giving us a feel, right? You're a microfinance bank in Cross River State, and probably the biggest of the bank. So maybe you can start by telling us about the Kondo Microfinance Bank, and what is your feel for how the economy, the economic activities, in Cross River State have been over the last, maybe 5 years or 7 years, whatever. Just give us a feel. You don't necessarily, if you have figures would be great to have, but otherwise, just give us a feel.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Austin Agbesoyin. I'm the MD of the Kondo Bank. The Kondo Microfinance Bank, I've been in the state for 25 years now, and we've been part of a lot of MSME development all over the states. We have branches all over from Ogoja to Bakassi and the rest. Now,
sorry, if you don't mind me interrupting you, how many branches in total do you have across?
We have 19 branches. 19 branches.
19. Spread across. Would you have one in every local government in the state?
Yeah, well, the aim is to have one in every local government, but of course, there's still some local government where we have two. For instance, the big local government like Akampa, like Calabar South, like Calabar Municipality. But in most of the local governments, we have in the north, in the central, and in the south, central district. So we've done a lot of work with MSME over the years. And my take, I've been in the state for over 7 years, and I've been part of a lot of development. I've worked with SMEDA, I've worked with MEDA, I've worked with a lot of them in trying to develop MSMEs in the state. And in Cross River State, like Mr. James Alicia said earlier, it is more of you have a lot of civil servants compared to businesses, and that is a factor when you start comparing Cross River State to states like Rivers, states like Lagos and Kano, and that's why you see those figures that is coming from the ease of doing business figures. And I'm not going to doubt those figures. Actually, I'll tell you the truth because I've been in other places and I know how it is. But the truth is, the matter is that, when you have many entrepreneurs in an environment, they seem to bet more entrepreneurs. So there's this mentorship that happens over the years. You see somebody who has finished ahead of you in school and is doing a business. There's this thing that wants you to do the business because it's successful. But when you have everybody leaving school and they're going to civil service, then of course you see the bias of more people going to that space than the entrepreneurship world. However, having said that, there's so many challenges that have faced the MSMEs in Cross River State, and so comparing them sometimes may not be fair on the state. The land mass. The logistics that you have in some states that are small, like Lagos, for instance, for instance, it's not the same in Cross River. The road infrastructure, I mean, if you try to travel from Obanliku to Bakassi, it could take you almost half of the day. You could be using like 8 or 9 hours doing that journey. The roads are bad, and then so if you are doing business from that side and you have to have customers around the side, it's going to be a challenge. In some other states, they're so compact in the same place. And that's a factor in why the growth has not been so phenomenal. Except there's concerted effort by government and some well-meaning Cross-River to cite some of these. For instance, you have MEDA in Calabar. Do we have MEDA in Ikom? Do we have in Ogoja? Do we have? It's the same people here that are traveling around the place. There should be specialized offices in those places that supports businesses. You also see, even in the banking sector where I play, you'll see that most microfinance bank, most commercial bank are situated in this part. You don't see so many of them in every area. So that limits the access to finance that some of these MSME may require to grow. But in the last 7 years, I can see a growth in that space. I've worked with MSMEs, especially the micro people, who have done say turnover of maybe 1 million in a year, and now they're doing 5 million in 6 months, and that has increased their earning capacity. It has increased their production capacity. It has increased even the financing capacity that they've been able to access. So that's, for me, I think is a good sign. However, when you start seeing policy changing there and there, MEDA was there, EDC was there, and is no longer there. A lot of people who have benefited cannot also do a refresher, cannot even introduce more people to that space. So in my opinion, the business environment in Cross River State still needs a lot of support from government and some non-government organizations like you're doing here. And you know, I watched a video earlier. A lot of people bring a lot of people to understand that they can get support in terms of training, in terms of financing, and the rest. So having said that, I think there's hope. I think we should just do more of orientation. We also need to make government to understand that the support for micro businesses is inevitable and must be given, because that will go a long way in developing the micro, small, and medium enterprises space in Cross River State.
Okay. Thanks very much. And I will come back to you to ask what Econdo Microfinance Bank does in terms of providing support for the growth of MSMEs. I'll come back to you on that. But let me read a comment that's been posted. And I think following this comment, I would have a question for Mr. Alicha. So it says, hi, please, what is the Cross River State government doing in terms of incentives to encourage startups? Firstly, the many red tapes, multiple taxes, particularly in Cross River State, continue to pose a challenge. What is government doing in this regard? So, of course, government is responsible for setting the tax regime. I know of a startup business, an IT startup business, very young, yet to make a profit, was slammed, I think, in 2019 with a tax liability of, I think, about 2.8 million. Of course, the company could not pay it. What did they do? They closed shop in Cross River State, and just moved and went elsewhere. So we know, and this is, this is something that, as you talk to businesses in the state, it's a recurring theme amongst them. Multiple taxes are too high, businesses are being forced to close down. Mr. James Alicha, what is your view on the tax regime in Cross River State, and how has it affected business? So, you've had a lot on culture, but the statistics, the figures tell us that there are other factors that are affecting the growth of MSMEs in Cross River State. Don't you think that the tax regime is one of them?
Well, yes, I agree with you completely. The tax regime should be one of them. But in every challenge that businesses face, there is always a window for you to jump out of it. Once, when I traveled to Asaba, and I saw a sticker which I enumerate the taxable items as a business ought to pay. And I read there are 32 of them. I shouted, say 32 items for you to comply, to operate a business in Delta State. That was quite tasking. Now, if you come to our state, I agree, there are much. But what we advise, there are business membership organizations. When you have those challenges, like the particular case you mentioned, that a business ought not to close because a tax burden has been placed on that business. You have business membership organizations like the Chambers of Commerce, like MSME, like MAN, or what we combine together, we have the Cross River State Organized Private Sector Council. You see, when you are running a business, try to belong to business membership organization. Those are the structures that interface with government. And I know Calcima, for instance, has severally intervened or engaged with government on arbitrary taxes or laws that government tried to put in place, which is against business operation in Cross River State. So businesses that are having much tax burden should either approach the business membership organization of their choice so that we interface with government. I remember in 2015, the combined organized private sector together with one of these other agencies, interface with the local government laws. And we brought all the taxable items in local government under one law. And that was the Cross River State local government tax law of 2015, number 1. And that has reduced the tax burden. So there are things we are working out to ensure that it exists. Those taxes exist. There is no state you go in this country that those taxes are not there. They are there, but most people don't have the understanding. So they allow the taxes to weigh them out of business. It ought not to be so. They are negotiable. You can negotiate them. If you have a tax burden, you can go to Internal Revenue Service and renegotiate. Even the Federal Inland Revenue, we renegotiate. I myself, I have had several challenges. I've even taken some local government to court to challenge them over some impossible taxes. And I won my case. So people should not run away when those issues come, but there are ways you can come out of it.
Okay.
Then we talked about government incentive. Yes, that question talks about government incentive. Every government developed incentive to support businesses in the state, because at the end of it, the taxes that if the businesses are stifled, it will tell on the volume of revenue that state receives. So it is a responsibility of the government to ensure that businesses are promoted, to ensure that the tax they pay return back to government. So, well, I'm not much part of this government currently, so I don't know much of the incentive that is available. So Ibo can speak on that.
Okay, Louis, Ibo, so do you want to mention some of these incentives, perhaps? Louis Ibok? No. Okay. All right. Let me.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, I was saying that. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, go on.
All right. So I was saying that we have incentives. The business support we provide is an incentive for doing business or to help businesses run. And in our office, we have relationships with banks, microfinance banks, and even agencies of government and the business management organization. Like Mr. Alicha said, if a business has an issue, the first thing is to seek help from either a business membership or the organization, or even come to MEDA office, or even go to the IRS office first and try to find out what is the real position. I'm certain that that business that got that tax valuation, it must have been something they call best of judgment. And the business could easily have negotiated that if he was able to prove that his income is not at that level. I'm almost certain of that. Regarding incentives, what we provide is try to provide linkages to people that can help you facilitate your business. So we have different people in the funding sector. You have the BOIs, BOEs, the microfinance banks. We work with them a lot. So there are incentives. All people need to do is find out. But government may not come to dash you money. However, there are other things that one can get from government if they come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think government should be dashing out money, as you describe it to everybody. I think that government just needs to provide that conducive environment. Right. Whether it's, I think it was Mr. Agreso, he talked about infrastructure. So, if you're in Calabar doing business in Obandiku, how do you how do you commute between those two locations, when there are virtually no roads, to do that? So I think that there's a lot that that government can do in terms of just providing that environment that's conducive for business to thrive. And we'll get into that, shortly as sort of the second segment of this conversation, because we know that elections, this administration, which, like you pointed out, Mr. Ebok, seems to have its agenda to industrialize, whatever that means, But we know that there's a new administration that's going to be coming in 2023, and I would like to hear from all the panelists and anyone else who's a guest on this conversation. What can we do to get Cross River State to become the foremost destination when it comes to ease of doing business? So I'd like to hear views on that. I think there were two hands up, but the hands seem to have gone down. Bobby Udo, Blessing Akman, do you have anything to say? Do you have any comments you'd like to make before we move forward?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Do I have the permission to get the floor?
You do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iso, for convening this conversation, and thank you to the panelists who are part of it and shedding such great insights on the challenges that face MSMEs in Cross River State. I think I have somewhat of an what I would call informed position, being one of the facilitators in the Entrepreneurship Development Center that was set up and run by Central Bank of Nigeria in collaboration with the state over 5 years. And we had vested professional and even personal interest in the success of these MSMEs that we trained, and in some parts, especially for the startups, midwifed into existence. The first thing I'm going to say is, as a community, Cross River State really doesn't have a viable environment for business to thrive. The cost of doing business is too expensive when you look at the socio-political, economic factors. Let's start from the basic businesses that people have. Just because there's such a high level of subsistence living in Cross River State, the basic businesses you go to in response to the needs that are available are just basic subsistence, activities like, food, clothing, trading, basically retail. Because retail, unfortunately or fortunately, by the structure of its business, has the highest and quickest return on investment. Now, if you're looking at trading, you're going to be getting your products or products from somewhere, and that brings into question the road network. In and out of Cross River State is a nightmare and has been for years. You have people losing goods because of bad roads. Cost of bringing the goods in is so expensive because the transporters are charging them an arm and a leg. Then you have to provide your own local government as a concerns power, as a concerns security, because you have to have power in your shop to maybe cool your drinks or service your computers that you are using to give basic needs. And remember that there is the aspect of what the consumer is willing and able to pay. So they don't care if it costs you 100 naira to produce and bring that service or product to the market. If they're not able to pay 100 naira just because of the low income per capita GDP in the States, they can't pay. And so they'll price you 80 naira. So sometimes you find businesses selling at a loss just to try to make ends meet, because they themselves are also dependent on those funds. Mr. Aliche had alluded to the fact earlier on that, and it's been said severally, that Cross River State is a civil service state. I might beg to differ. Maybe, yes, he did say in recent years, yes, because pure reason, hunger. People have realized that you can't depend on one source of income for their livelihoods. And so they're looking for every other thing that they can run, just to survive. And when business is put into that position, something to do so that we can survive and pay bills, it's never going to thrive. The next thing is, most businesses operate as competitors to each other, even operating within the same field. And so that's ideology and concept of community. I think one business I'm going to point out and I'm really proud of is Uwayen's events. I was part of that business, or I saw it when it started as a table at one of the pop-up markets. And now she's got that big business. One thing I recognize that she's done is that she's built a community about her services. So when you come to her, she's not delivering all the services, but she's got a one-stop shop for her, your photographer, your video, everything that you need, for your event. And she puts it all together. And so she has been able to capture some bit of the market. But she did mentorship under, I believe it was Turning Point, and has been able to build networks even outside her direct line of business. Building that community instead of competing with other people, I think has been able to, one of the reasons why she's thriving. That being said, the government has a lot to do in terms of power generation to support businesses, either maybe a tax break for businesses, security, road, and of course the taxes. It's just way out there. If that comes into place, then I'm sure that we'll be able to attract new money. When you compare Cross River to places like Lagos or Port Harcourt, those people have money coming in from outside the states because those other aspects are in place. Yes, there's insecurity in Lagos, but compared to Calabar, there's still some level of sanity because the government puts in place checks and balances to ensure that the businesses that they have in place thrive because they are getting their money. Internally generated revenue from Lagos is one of the highest in the country, and they recognize this. So I don't think that the government enough recognizes the power that entrepreneurs can have in the states and their contribution to the states. For me, that would be the first step, but we can't control the government. They do what they do, obviously, and they have done for the many years. Individually, if we build strong communities, Dr. Alicia referred to the Cross River Chambers of Commerce. I don't know how much it is now to join, but it still has an elitist air that someone who's operating a 50,000 Naira business, just small mom and pop shop, might not be able to participate in. So what are those other community structures that can be put in place to support those people, in every sphere as it concerns this business, that they can, on the private sector side, that is, that they can lean on and use to thrive. There are cooperatives, financial cooperatives, that help do hand-in-hand helping. There are, business groups now. I see all of them popping up even on WhatsApp, on Facebook. There are business women support groups and things like that. And that's really exciting. So if those people can be supported with information, with capability building, with, maybe the chambers of commerce can go out free on a limb to advocate for them, give them this information, like, you just talked, Mr. Iboki talked about best case interests, or referring to that tax situation. I'm sure some of these businesses don't even know about that, So if some more advocacy needs to be done and some more free services has to be done because they can't survive yet at where they are at. Let me land my plane now here. Thank you.
Blessing, thank you very much for your contributions. And I know you were part of that EDC team. And I believe we had Mr. Benga Owolabi on this call at some point on this conversation, but I don't see him now. It would have been interesting to hear his views. Mr. David Etem, your hands are up, please go on. But before you do, if anyone else has a comment, please go ahead and type it. Or if you would like to speak, use the reaction icon to just indicate. After David has made his comment, we will now go to what are those ideas? How can we make number one? Nice to hear from all the panel. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, first I want to thank Blessing Akpan, I think her name was, the lady that just spoke now, because she took a bit of my thunder. And I am glad that she did, because she came from an angle of being a player within the EDC environment at the time. Now, Mr. Liche had alluded to the fact that at some point in time, particular governments within Cross River State had paid attention to small and medium enterprises and how to help them grow. Now, I believe that the organized private sector or the business, the BMOs, have a lot to do in terms of taking that spirit forward. I personally am a private sector person. I happen to be the deputy president of the Calabar Chamber of Commerce today. And I am 100% private sector. Now, I believe that projects like EDC, okay, now government can start them, but government always goes into some degree of fatigue, donor fatigue. But where there is a sustainability plan and the private sector begins to own such projects, which is something that the Abuja Chamber of Commerce, the Lagos Commerce is doing very well. The Calabar Chamber of Commerce has owned such a structure. Then I do believe that sustainability then becomes a possibility, because the reason why EDC, after 5 years, it was a project. Government ran it for 5 years. At the end of it, the funding dried out. It moved on. But if private sector had owned it, private sector is not going anywhere. Okay, and there's always, because it will ultimately become a revolving fund, there would always be sustainability. So I am a strong advocate in going forward that private sector of Cross River State should take up more space in terms of the governance space. Okay, that's really what I wanted to contribute, that the private sector should take up more space. The government is shifting. The truth of the matter is that government, in terms of value for money, in Nigerian government globally is one of the worst governments for value for money. So if you give them a to do business, okay, the value you get out of that your $1 is like 15 cents, okay, not up to 20 cents, okay. But in other places you get a lot more value for money. But in the private sector, even in Nigeria, if you give the private sector $1, you get $1 value, and it's a globally recognized thing today. Okay, so international, it's private sector in Nigeria today has better access to funding than government of Nigeria today. I can say that categorically. Okay, so if the private sector picks up its slack, I believe that the private sector can be a very strong alternative to driving the economy than government, because everybody is talking and everybody is leaning to government in expecting government to deliver on its obligations. Okay, now government does not have the track record in banking. You say it's track record of delivering on its obligations. Government is a very poor deliverer of value in this country. Okay, I mean, it's not a Cross River State thing. Oh, right from federal, it's not Cross River State. So realizing it. Okay, but globally speaking, in the country, government is a very poor deliverer of service. Okay, and private sector is not. But private sector in Cross River State, unfortunately, has not risen to its calling. Okay, has not picked up the slack, has not picked up the gauntlet, as they say, and dispatched its own space. So I really want to put the blame more squarely on the private sector sleeping on its rights than on government not delivering, because government has a track record of not delivering from 1960 to date. Okay, from 1960.
What in your when you say the private sector, who are you referring to? Is it the organized? For instance, you represent the organized private sector chamber. So what is it that you feel needs to happen? What does the private sector need to do, and how do we go about making that happen?
The organized private, I've given 2 examples of what the Abuja Chamber of Commerce is doing in terms of driving capacity within the Abuja environment, or Lagos Chamber of Commerce is doing in terms of driving capacity development. Now, today in Lagos State, there is no governor that comes into Lagos State that does not sit down with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce to discuss his economic plan for Lagos. You can't win an election in Lagos State without doing that. You will defend your proposals. You will defend your programs that you want to come, and the private sector will hold you accountable for the 4 years until the next election. Okay, in Cross River State, the private sector is completely sleeping. I am part of the problem because I am a deputy president and I own it. So we are sleeping. We have not woken up to our responsibility. Okay, because where we set the agenda, where we take up that space, like EDC, if private sector had owned EDC immediately after it was the 5-year tenure was expiring and moved it, there is tons of money in the world looking for development finance. I'm talking about, okay, that is looking for where to go, and the organized private sector can easily access that money. okay, that would have taken EDC forwards in the same mode it was. Okay, he said about 12,000 or 15,000 people were trained. What is the value add to the GDP of Cross River State? Zero. Because after they trained them, they just let them go. And those people just walked away. So they've gotten training in Cross River State, then they go and add value to the economy of Akwa Ibom State, or they add value in the economy of River State, or somewhere else, or Ebonyi State. Okay? Because you have not, capacity and skill will go where there's demand. He's not going to sit down and look at you and say, oh, it's my mother's village, and stay there. It will move. But you have, the Cross River State economy has developed that capacity and lost it because there was no follow through. Okay, and if the private sector had risen and taken up that space immediately as CBN was saying, you know what, donor fatigue is coming in, and you pick it. That is what Abuja did. That is what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the Chamber of Commerce in London or in Britain. I'm talking about within the same Nigerian space. Abuja Chamber of Commerce picked up that gauntlet and is driving big. There is nothing that the federal government today, Abuja Chamber of Commerce is competing with NASIMA in terms of relevance because it is in the center and it has positioned itself. If government is talking about any policy direction today, the president of Abuja Chamber of Commerce is called to that discussion table. Ditto in Lagos State. Cross River State, in terms of the gentleman from Ekondo was talking about traveling from Obanliku to Bakassi. Cross River State is the size of Ogun and Lagos State put together, and a bit of maybe some other or your state, some port. Cross River State is huge, and we have only 4.5 million people. Imagine you had only 4.5 million people between Lagos and Ogun State. Their per capita GDP would be like maybe $2,000. I mean, what am I saying? Would be like maybe $40,000, like somewhere in Dubai, because of productivity.
Okay, all right. Okay, David, thanks very much for the points that you've made. Let me go back to the panelists and we'll begin to sort of wind down a little bit. But we know that a new administration is coming in 2023. Now, Louis Ibok, your organization NEDA is charged with the responsibility for growing and supporting MSMEs. What is it that we should be putting on the agenda of an incoming government in 2023 that would take Cross River State to the #1 in terms of the ease of doing business and would help MSMEs in the state to grow and thrive? What should we be putting on the agenda for the incoming administration?
Thanks. So first, let me say that a lot of the conversation is good, but I think that also we need to get some more details about some of the things we said. But on your question, I think that two things. There has to be focus on the private sector by the incoming government. No matter what we say, the private sector from where we are now still requires a lot of government to be able to stand well. I think that what we'll be pushing is for government to provide better soft and hard infrastructure. Soft infrastructure in terms of policies that make it easy for people to do business or to access support, as they ought to, And then in terms of hard infrastructure, we need more incubation centers and all that. All right. So these are all things we will have to do. And then data is so critical. We need to have data of where everyone starting a business, where it is. In fact, I think that even the revenue base of government will be dependent on accurate data, because a lot of people are outside the net, the revenue net for now, because there's no data concerning them or the kind of businesses they do. And like somebody asked, I think it's also because maybe the incentives are not attractive enough to pull them in. If we work on providing better incentives, maybe to pull more people into that database and that space, and then it becomes easy to do some of these things. Now, for instance, the EDC, it takes a lot of money. It's a business, so it takes money to run business. And some of these things are not automatic. Don't forget, that EDC, when it started, it was not just for Cross River, it was for South-South. So it would train people across the state. And again, I want to speak to the fact that we don't need to wait for the to take over the EDC to do any capacity building. You know, if you have a structure, you can run trainings and capacity buildings anywhere. You don't need, the EDC is just a location. And the concept is bigger than one location. That's the truth. Today, the university has almost more than maybe 8,000 to 10,000 students training per time. All right, so these are all things. And then I also think that going forward, we need to promote collaborative platforms. So all the BMOs should be working together. NASME, NASI, CalCIMA. Blessing said CalCIMA looks elitist, but there's NASI, National Association of Small Scale Industrialists, for small micro businesses just started. There's NASME, there's MAN. These are all places people can key in. So a lot of collaboration has to come in. The organized private sector has to determine what role it wants to play. And then if you want to push for government to do certain things, let them do it. But basically, we'll provide incubation centers, we'll provide more capacity for people, we'll provide, if government can provide funding. I remember in the past, what we used to do was get funds from government, establish matching funds so that we get more money to give to businesses. Also, basic things like documentation. This is what I think the BMOs will help their people to put in place. Every business ought to belong to a BMO. And it has to be part of our psyche that if you want to start business, locate one of the BMOs to join. They will provide you with the right information and the right path.
Sorry, do you want to tell us
what
the BMO is?
Business Management Organization, like NASME, CalCIMA, and NASI, and MAN, you know? And of course, these guys can help. And engagement with government should continue. I know that the Chambers of Commerce has been doing a lot of engagement with His Excellency, the Governor, all right? And I think they should continue those engagements. It will help to frame what the next government will do. But for me, I think that primary focus, soft and hard infrastructure policies, and setting up more incubation centers to help businesses start and grow and remain sustainable. All right, so we'll provide more of those support. And a lot of these things fall within the purview of my agency anyway. So I'm certain that we'll be doing more of this as we go forward. And then the agency is open, people can walk in. If you feel that there are ideas and there are things you feel we should be doing, please walk in. The ease of doing business, government also needs to focus on it. Because I remember that there was a time that the indices were brought low because there was focus on it, right? So as we focus on it, I'm sure that we can do things and put things in place that will naturally reduce it, not just for the sake of having it good on a report, but for the sake of allowing businesses start and thrive in our state. All right, so I think I'll just keep it there.
Okay,
and let other people. Yeah.
Yes, thanks very much. So let's go to Mr. Augustine Agbesoin. So what is it that you would advise the incoming administration? What do you think we should be putting on the agenda? And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because we as an organization, the Cross River Movement, have taken on, you know, that responsibility, as it were, to put an agenda forward, you know, and have conversations. So let's get politicians talking about the things that actually matter. So what do you think, from your perspective, can be should be put on the agenda for politicians in you know, ahead of 2023, that a new administration should focus on for MSMEs?
Thank you very much. Following all our discussions earlier, I'll make bold to say that the issue of creating incentives for businesses cannot be overemphasized. So the next government, I will expect that they should be thinking of focusing more on creating incentives to make people to go into business and improve their production capacity, make the environment very conducive for Cross River, even outside Cross River, to come in here and engage in production capacity that will help grow the economy of the state. Now, you also see the issue of taxations. I know what we run, even the microfinance banks that we run, we know the kind of taxes that we get left, right, and center from local government, from state government, from different places. And if we're not able to take through those things, perhaps it'll be the same story like someone you earlier shared with us. But the fact is that multiple taxation should be eliminated. Also, I would also like the government to, as the politicians is coming in, it is important for some of these guys to tell us how well they can partner with funding organizations, the microfinance banks in their programs. You see where people go about touching money out to traders, they call it different names, traders money, a couple of different names. The truth is, you need to walk through participating financial institutions to help to build their capacity before granting them the grants you're doing, and then they build up into what they can create value for themselves, make more productions, and sustain their businesses. So the issue is, most times, most companies die in the early stages. So if government can provide some of this at the beginning, at a point in time, they'll be able to sustain themselves and move forward. So for a lot of the people who in the state as well, who are running NGOs and the rest, there will be need for collaboration with government and and other people to ensure capacity building in the state. A lot of perseverance in businesses do not understand what entrepreneurship is all about. You start a business in 5 weeks, 5 months, you're struggling at the beginning, and then you're off the business. I mean, you need to understand the stages of business, and don't be quick to feel that business has failed. There are steps that you need to take. If you have the right orientation, there's a possibility that you get to understand how this, and the issue of mentorship will be very, very useful. So, for instance, as the bank, before we even grant you loan, we have what we call capacity financial literacy training, which we try to do for all our customers to ensure that, look, you're not just coming to the bank to take money. We want you to grow with your businesses. We want to be able to create value, create employment for some other people. And that way you can improve yourself, you can improve the capacity, you can improve even the state in general. So a lot of entrepreneurs need this orientation, need this credit training, need this all the capacity that they require. In fact, bookkeeping is an issue in the business environment. Now, as a bank, we've tried to lend to so many people beyond what we have done. We'll try to do a lot, and find out one of the things that happens is that most of the businesses that they run are not bankable. You don't have records. You don't have the differentiation between yourself and the business, and that is what we think capacity building will have helped them to achieve. For them to have proper book of account when you're running a business, for us to be able to assess your credibility, your credit history, your financial capacity for the kind of loan that we can help you to build your capacity over time. So the environment, the business environment will require a lot of orientation. And I think with that, we can start thinking about how to be the next Lagos or any of those developed states in terms of businesses. You talk about and beyond government, I'm going beyond government. I'm also going to private sector, the manufacturers of Nigeria, the NASA and all of them. How many collaboration partnership are you doing with funders like microfinance, microfinance? I can't remember how many of them we've worked with apart from MEDA and SMEDAN. And I'm hearing there's so many of them, even in the state. I don't even know where their location is. So let's partner together and help build a sustainable business for our people and the entire Cross River State. And before you know it, the GDP is growing, the employment rate is reducing, and everybody will be happy. I think that's my take for now. I'm also available to talk about other things that we can provide as a bank. Beyond capacity training, we have different products. Irrespective of where you are in the state, we can work together. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much, Augustine. Okay, I can see Bobby Udo. If you want to unmute, and if within 2 minutes you can share your contribution.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring something as somebody who is not a business person, and that's we sometimes underestimate the importance of education, informative education. So my suggestion will be an initiative. I don't know which agency, it could be an NGO, it could be a combination of NGO with government agencies, to do a lot of entrepreneurship education in primary and secondary schools, and even in universities. In secondary school, there can be clubs where people go, volunteers go, and a part of the agencies, or seminars are held, and they come and they listen, because the next generation have ideas that we've not even considered, but they don't know what to do. They have no idea how to explore them. So education can help to harness what is in the minds and hearts of Crossivarians amongst the next generation, so that they're guided and know how to develop and actualize those ideas. That's my point.
Okay, Bobby, thanks very much. Thank you. Louis Ibok, I can see your hand up. Let me read out a couple of comments that have been posted in the chat, and then maybe Louis will come to you before we go to Mr. James Alicha. So Claire says, thank you very much for this very enlightening session. It would be really great for more people to access this wonderful resource of conversations by TCRM. So yep, on that note, I would encourage everyone who's on the conversation, we have these conversations every 2 weeks on different topics. So when you receive the invitation, please share it with other people, so more people can participate, and let's spread the word. And if you if you want to listen in on any of our previous conversations, they can be found on our YouTube page. So Edidion, if you don't mind, please just share the YouTube link so that people can access previous resources. And if you've not liked our YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do so. Just take out time, click on that link that's been posted, and click on the subscription button, and share it with your friends as well. Okay, so we have a comment from Facebook from someone called Eno Daniel, who says, a lot of businesses have left the state because of multiple taxes. How can this be managed, or how can this be mitigated? So this again, emphasizes that point that the tax regime in the state isn't really helping businesses to grow. All right, Louis Ibok, please unmute yourself and share your feedback, your comments.
Okay, I wanted to add to what Bobby said about entrepreneurship at school level. I had mentioned earlier that the EDC is working with the entrepreneurship development centers in the universities in the state, and also MEDA has started. We just need to maybe increase it and spread to other schools. We have started entrepreneurship clubs in secondary schools across the 3 senatorial districts. So we plan to continue, and to reach out to all the schools. And one of our plans going forward actually is to have people in every local government, and if possibly in every ward. If we can support that overhead, we'll have people representing us in every ward, so that there's a lot of support to businesses at the local level, not just in Calabar. So I just wanted to mention that, by way of passing.
Okay, thanks very much, Louis. Okay, Mr. James Alicha, so you represent MSMEs. You represent, I guess, an organized group of MSMEs. What is it that you would like to put on the agenda of the incoming administration that can help MSMEs grow in Cross River State?
Yes, thank you very much. I think what the agenda has already been set by this current regime, because
many would disagree with that. Many would disagree, like Mr. Ibok said.
No, let me land first.
Okay.
See, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, I look at opportunity is not what other people looked at it. Yes, you may disagree, but I, as a businessman, I see opportunity in what is on ground. Let me take you back. If you look at Lafarge, for instance, or before now, UNICEF that has metamorphosed to Lafarge was just a small Calsemco factory that was producing a very small quantity of cement in the state here. A value was added to it, and today is one of the Africa leading cement manufacturing factory. The same thing of flour mill. You can say the same thing of a Transcorp Hotel. They are the major business concern in the state that we can point to. In the same vein, all the industries that the current state government have developed can be, a value can be added to it, and they become a major industrial concern in the states. That is the business, that is the opportunity I looked at it. So it is an agenda for the incoming administration to expand on what is on ground. That is by way of answering that question. That is what I have to say. Then two, the Blessing Akpan who spoke earlier, her opening statement, I disagree with her opening statement that Cross River State is not conducive for business operation. Cross River State is the most conducive for business operation. If you want to do outsource factories, Cross River State is cheaper in terms of land. If you want to acquire land, it's cheaper compared to Lagos or River State or even Abuja or Kano. If you in terms of personnel emolument, Cross River State will be cheaper. Cost of living, Cross River State will be cheaper. Cost accessibility, access to raw materials, Cross River State will be more cheaper. So we are looking at business, maybe at, like she said, at a small scale level. If you do that, it will be high. But if you look at industrial level, where you need to, at industrial level, Cross River State is the most suitable business most suitable environment to situate a business. You can, these days, internationally factories, they do outsource. Like in the Americans have their factories in India, where the labor is very cheap. Yes. So everybody moved to where labor is cheap, where cost of living is cheap.
Yeah, so the question then I would ask you, if Cross River State is the most conducive place to do business in Nigeria, then why is there not more?
Yes, it is the orientation, like I stated earlier.
No, but if a location is attractive, if a location is attractive,
our eyes have not been open to that, and it is being open now.
No, but if a location is attractive, the point is that people will come from everywhere to do business there, whether it is Kano, Lagos, they will come there to do business because that environment.
Let's talk for instance. Let's look at Dubai. Dubai was not there, was one of the unattractive centers in the world earlier, but it was created. Like Mr. Etim rightly said, what we need to do is a business or community to rise to the occasion. Yes, because it's not government that will come and develop this business for us. It is ourselves. It's the business community that will rise to the occasion, taking from knowledge
community
and exposure that we have gotten.
Let me ask your view on this. So, for instance, we know that in April, from April into May, I think over a month, the Calabar had no electricity supply. Is it who is responsible for that? If you say that it's such an attractive place to do business, why would I come to put my business there if for a whole month there will not be electricity there? It doesn't happen anywhere.
No. This is not a good. That is not a good analogy at all, because what happened then? It was an unforeseen circumstance. It was according to NEPA that it was a vandalization, whether NEPA or PHCN.
No, I know
their structure, what do you call it? Their facility was vandalized, and it happens. Anything can happen at any given time. And beside that, in Nigeria, all over Nigeria, whether Lagos or any part, there is nobody who depends on a public supply, public electricity to run his business.
Yeah, but how many times have you heard Port Harcourt or Lagos, the whole city plunged into darkness for 1 month?
I'm not living in those cities, so I won't know.
Okay, all right. It hasn't. I can assure you that it hasn't happened in any of those. Those.
The vandalization of those facilities was not done in Calabar. It's an overhead.
Yes, I know. But if there's vandalization,
I don't know what you call it. It was what do you call it, transmission line that was vandalized. And not even, it's unfortunate that it happens in Cross River State.
Okay. All right, Mr. Alicha, thank you very, very much. I think our time is fast spent. Let me thank the panelists. Thank you, Mr. Louis Ibok, for coming on. I know you just returned from Uyo, so we greatly appreciate the fact that you're able to join us on this conversation.
Thank you.
Mr. Augustine Agbesoye, thank you very much also for joining us. And Mr. James.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate having you on the conversation. Yeah, so this conversation has been brought to you by the Cross River Movement. And if you haven't signed up, I would encourage you to visit www.crossrivermove.com and join the movement. And you can follow us on Facebook at Cross River Move, on Twitter at Cross River Move also. And we have these conversations every fortnight. So the next conversation should be taking place on Sunday, the 10th of July. And we will be discussing issues to do with our judicial system in Cross River State. So you will get the invite. When you get it, please share it, and we look forward to having you on the conversation. Thank you very much once again, and please enjoy the rest of your weekend. God bless.